Good afternoon, folks. Today is still Wednesday, April 23rd. Wednesday at 1:45. We are continuing our work on some version of H483. And we have some folks joining us to talk about other pensions. Beginning with Chris Doobie from the Professional Firefighters Association of Vermont. If you want to join us.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to Ways and Means.
First time, so I'm honored.
Is it? Honored to have you.
If I mess it up, like I said, throw something at me.
We will not do that under any circumstances.
So real quickly for the record, my name is Chris Doobie. I'm the president of the Professional Firefighters of Vermont. Have been for about 4 years. Brief little background on me. Hired in Hartford, Vermont Fire Department in 1992. Retired at the end of last year, 32.5 years. It's a long time. Retired out of the rank as a captain paramedic. Just want to know that because as a captain, I'm still on the line, on the truck, going into fires, going on rescues, still being in the ambulance as a paramedic. One of only 2 on the shift, so I got a fair amount of experience. So I bring this up. And Madam Chair, thank you for inviting me in to speak on this, and I know most here. So I'm in here to speak specifically in reference to the military pension and the exclusion of public safety. I know this bill has been out there numerous times through the years. I know that the body as a whole has been hesitant to move it because you're going to give it to one, how are you going to determine who gets it moving forward? I'm basing it solely on public safety. That's my wheelhouse. That's what I know. That's what I've lived. I do have family members that served in the military. My brother was in the Marines for 6 years. My grandfather served. I'm in the Marines during World War II. He didn't get deployed. He stayed stateside because he had a vision issue. So I have the utmost respect for the military. This is no way mean to gut them. I support them getting that benefit. All I'm going to testify today on is that I think to do it and to do it right, you must add public safety. And I'm going to lay out a lot of reasons. And a lot of it hinged on the white paper that you're all given back a couple, 3 months ago from the governor's Veterans Advisory Committee, because they know historically that public safety has been a hindrance and people say that, and there was some inaccuracies in there. I mean, I'm going to be honest, it pissed me off, some of the stuff that was written on it about us, how somehow it made us look inferior to them. So I want to try to dispel some of that myth in a few minutes, okay? So like I said, that bill has been introduced numerous times, but there's been hesitation due to the issues of adding or excluding various occupational groups. As I told you, the white page on a comparison of civilian public safety versus military, and it actually had a tremendous amount of bias, in my opinion, and it irritated a lot of my members on the fire side. I can't speak for the police, but I have, when I worked in Hartford through the years, I've talked with our police force to get their feeling on it too, so I have an idea of somewhere where they stand on it, which is very similar to us, okay? And like I said, it wasn't very factual. Like I say, giving the break to military and not including public safety, in my eyes, is an insult. We do very similar missions. Their mission is to protect us from what? External threats, foreign countries. Public safety protects you all from internal threats. Fire, hazardous conditions, active shooters. I do have testimony. I'll give it to Sorsha when I'm done. So like I say, the white paper states that our missions may differ. The fact is that the danger, the sacrifices, the loyalty of our members, and the commitment are the same. We're both tasked with protecting citizens of this country. The military focuses on external, we do internal threats. Another threat that people aren't aware of that public safety faces, that the military may or may not face, is we often have hard targets on our back when it comes budget time. Okay. I've been there through numerous years where they threaten to cut staffing. We're always fighting for wage increases, safety issues. I'm not saying the military doesn't, but we see it quite frequently because of taxes. We're funded by taxpayers too. When the taxes are going to go up 10%, the first thing they start looking at, on top of schools, which I'm sure they'll testify on, is public safety. It could be through layoffs, it could be through attrition. I can tell you from experience that you still need X number of people to fight a fire. Cutting that only puts more stress on us, makes it a much more dangerous job than it already is. And we are also, unbeknownst, and they said that the difference is they have to uphold the Constitution. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I took an oath when I got hired. I took an oath when I got promoted to lieutenant and to captain. That oath specifically states that I take an oath to uphold and enforce the Constitution and laws of the United States and the state of Vermont. So not just the country, but also the state of Vermont, along with the rules and ordinances of our respective municipality. So to me, and I'm like I said, I'm not trying to be an ass, but when they say that, well, we have to help, we have to take an oath, we do too. Police, fire, we all take that oath, not just to the country, but also the state and our municipality. So it's important to understand that the military service, much like public safety, is here. There's no draft. They get into that job because they want to do that, okay? So we do so willingly under our own accord. So we choose to go into this occupation. Some interesting facts I looked up, and I get it. I mean, you had some great people testifying today. Utmost respect. The important thing you understand, though, is only about 10 to 15% of military people actually see combat. It's much different on the public safety side. Every single one of us, at one point in our career, whether it's when I first get hired, some of us don't never get promoted. They do 20 years, 25, 30 years, stay a patrolman or a firefighter. Every time they go out the door, they're faced with danger, okay? So that's one of the big distinctions. I get it. There's people in here that serve, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about some that I've worked with personally that serve. I'm great people. I have utmost respect. What you also got to understand too is that we deal with fire, extreme weather conditions, vehicle crashes, technical rescues, a variety of technical rescues, not just, up on a mountain, but I've gone on ice rescues. Middle of the night, person was ice climbing, got stuck on the face, 10 below zero. We had to go out and get this person down to safety. You deal with hostile individuals, unsafe scenes, active shooter incidents. I can go on and on and on as far as the stuff we face. And like I said, in comparison, at least 95% or more of public safety members, public safety personnel face dangers and potentially life-ending situations every day they go to work. So and then I'm going to make this little jab. It's important to understand that public safety responders were the first on the scene at the Alfred Murrah building in Oklahoma City. They were the first on the scene at the events of 9/11. They were the first on the events of January 6th. Tropical Storm Irene and the recent flooding Vermont has experienced the last 2 or 3 years, it was your first responders that were there doing that dangerous work. And a lot of times, with the flooding specifically, it was at midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. Nothing scarier than going out and you can hear rushing water and you can't see what's going on. I can give you from experience during Hurricane Irene, one of the last rescues we made was out in West Hartford. And I happened to shine the light, and you know how high the road signs are? The water level was above the underside of those road signs. So you're sitting out there going, oh my God, this is the real deal. And it's coming over the bridge in West Hartford. So these are dangers that we face every single day. Now, are they same as a combat? Yes and no. There's still members in my job that go out and they never come home at the end of their shift. Okay, they face falling through a floor when they're falling through a building with zero visibility and high heat. Police officers knocking on the door at 1 or 2 in the morning for domestic getting shot. There's been instances of firefighters and EMTs going to a medical alarm at a house, knocking on the door. You got to open it because you don't know if there's a person down in there. Go through the door and they get shot by the person that called them. There's been incidents over in Western New York where a person would set a house on fire and sit up, and as the emergency responders are coming in, they're shooting at. So to think that our job is any less dangerous, like I said, is just an insult to our members that do this day in and day out. Often with very little recognition. COVID-19, remember, we were the ones when everybody else was working remote. Fire and police couldn't work remote. We had to be out there every day handling those emergencies. So all these events put our members in great harm, and some even lost their lives while protecting citizens. So the paper further stated the military personnel held to a higher standard, which is grossly incorrect. To say that the police officers are held to a high standard is just beyond me. They're sworn to protect you from the law. They know, and if anything, they're held to a higher standard because they are expected to know what the law is. So if they go out and they have a drink, whatever, and get pulled over for DWI, they're going to be held to a much stricter stance than anybody in this room. So it's important to understand that we are viewed as role models within our communities. We go to the schools, kids love firemen. They love police officers. They love paramedics. We try to bridge that too, to make them so they're not so scared when they see us with our, gear on and all that. We're not some freaky creature coming in to see you. So The other thing I want to stress too is that the public safety personnel are very similar and in some instances higher levels of certain injuries and diseases. I can speak specifically from the fire side. We have a higher incidence of cancers than anybody. Cancers are killing us at a phenomenal rate. PTSD and behavioral health is big across the board, whether you're fire or police, just because of the stuff we see on a daily basis. Cardiac issues, we see a large number of those in that field due to the work schedules. And I'm not saying military isn't, I mean, we get deployed, I get it 100%, but we do this every day. We're working shifts. Sometimes we have members that are working due to staffing. Sometimes they're in for 72 hours straight on duty. Think about that when you're running 20 or 30 calls in a cycle, that they get very little sleep over a 3-day period. So we see a lot of cardiac related issues, sleep related issues. And those are just a few that we know. We also starting to keep numbers on suicide, and we're finding specifically in the fire and police, phenomenal number of suicides due to the stress of the job. So also, I've heard the military mention they bring a lot of money in. The state, don't forget, public safety does too. We've got into Homeland Security grants, Fire Act grants, safer grants to help communities put staffing on for fire and EMS. Numerous criminal justice grants out there that my police department in Hartford got through the years, a tremendous amount of money from the federal government on that. So we do bring a lot of money into the state. All right. One of the distinctions too is that a lot of us in the public safety were in Beamers. Beamers maxes out at 50%. So unlike my military colleagues, they have a 2.5% divider. They could retire at 75, 80, some may even be 100% of their whatever they were making. We don't get that. We max out at for me, like 32 and a half years on the job. It doesn't matter. I had those 12 and a half years on tail end. I only get 50% of my best 2 years. That's it. We also see a large number of our members leave the state, unlike what the military is telling you. And that's for a variety of reasons. Some will say it is because of the taxes. They moved to the Carolinas because the tax rate is lower. Well, remember, it's a state that doesn't tax income tax. I've had people, firefighters tell me, well, I can go to this state. I go to New Hampshire. Well, New Hampshire doesn't have income tax. That's why your pensions don't get taxed. But they're not moving strictly because of that. I want to make that distinction. I mean, as we get older, I mean, it's nice to move to Florida or the Carolinas, you know? You don't have to shovel snow. You don't have to deal with the strange swings in the temperatures out there.
You don't have to
You
haul.
live your life, yeah, you know? Hang out in Nashville on, Broadway Street and just party all the time would be kind of fun, but, so yeah, we see that too. But there are a number that, don't get me wrong, there are a number that do stay in the state because they love it. Me, for instance, I do have a kid in school, but I do love living in the Hartford area. It's convenient to where I gotta go. So we do see that. We don't hold it true to that and strictly because of the taxes. I think it's a variety of reasons. Recruitment and retention are a major issue with public safety, and I heard them mention, well, if we can recruit military people that maybe they can get into it. Well, public safety is unique because you don't want somebody that's 40, 45, 50 years old being a firefighter, pulling a line at that age. It's a young man's gig, okay? I can tell you at my age, luckily I'm a captain, but I still had to pull a line once in a while or throw a ladder. At 57, you feel it, Our president for the IFF used to always state, when you're 20, you fall down the stairs in the fire, you get up, you run back up. 30, it takes you 5 or 10 minutes to shake it off, but you go back up. 40, you're probably going to go outside and take a break. Age 50, you're going to the hospital in the ambulance because you're going to get hurt. And there's a lot of truth to that. I never thought about it when I, towards the end of my career, when I can make it. And once I hit 50, it's like, oh, shit, I should have bought into the retirement system earlier. Age 55, it's like, oh my God, I still got 2 more years. But I made it, but it is tough. It's a young man's gig. So that kind of, some of them do get into the field. Some of them are really good physical. I'm not debating that. However, that number is not enough to make a difference. But recruitment and retention are a big issue in the state. When me 10 or 12 years ago in Hartford for one position, we would get 70 plus applicants for one position. We just hired, before I got done, three people, and I think they had 12 or 14 applicants total for 3 positions. Our colleagues in Burlington, they used to have 400 tests for their annual test. I think they're down to under 200 now. So we're seeing a dramatic decrease. Would adding us to this benefit help? It may, if we were lucky enough to get this. But to use that notion that, hey, military people are going to come into this field is not. I will say this. The unique thing about public safety is we see a lot of veterans get into public safety, meaning that they do 1 or 2 tours, they get out and they become a police officer or a firefighter. It's a very good fit. One of the biggest reasons is there's a lot of parallels between the two. That white paper seemed to make it separate. It's not. We have a command structure very similar to the military. We have a chain of command very similar to the military. It's structured a lot like that. And a lot of our people, when I retired, I had a probationary firefighter on my ship that came out of the Navy. And that's one of the reasons he joined us. He liked that structure. We hired another guy that was in the Army. He was a Tuck School graduate. I don't know why he'd want to get into firefighting. A graduate of Tuck School at Dartmouth, but he was a military guy that did 4 or 6 years in the military. And he came in because he wanted that structure, that camaraderie, that brotherhood, so to say. So we see a lot of parallels with that. So I would advocate that adding us in, you're going to capture a lot more veterans, okay? Because there's a lot of veterans that get into public safety. It's a natural fit for them. Good friend of mine, the president of Boston Firefighters, Local 718, Sammy Dillon. He's a Marine. He was in the military. He's a Marine. He's now sitting in Boston sees a lot of military people. Part of that is because they are civil service, but so and some of the other things too, I want just to point out, military does get some perks that we don't get. They get housing, they get stipends for family members and all that. Our members don't get that. I mean, so everything we get is like from the ground zero. You know, housing is an issue for our members from day one. You know, like they get 30 days annual leave. Our members for the first 5 years only get 1 week's vacation, maybe 2 if they're lucky, depending on how the contract goes. We don't get, very few of us get education incentives. We do get, a lot of us get, like the municipalities will pay for your paramedic, but you also sign an agreement saying that you will stay with that city or municipality at least 3 years. If you get done, you get done, but you got to pay us back based on that, either the full 15 grand or 10 grand, depending on what it breaks down to. But that's a big benefit to the municipalities also, because that level of service goes a long way. Like I said, the structure's the same. So, and I'm going to be blatantly honest, not including public safety, retirees at the onset of the bills. It's kind of insulting to our membership. I've heard it from my members from one end of the state to the other. Well, if they're going to get it, why don't we get it? I have some personal different opinions on that because we are both paid by taxpayers' money. But however, I do agree that, yeah, if one group gets it, what distinguishes one group from another from not getting it? I've also heard it, you know, say that, well, let's give it to the military first so we can add the other ones later. I'm not an expert in politics, but I've been up here enough over the last close to 10 years now. It's sometimes not easy. If you don't do it on that initial go through to get it added next year is an uphill battle.
Mhm.
So I'm an advocate. If you're going to do it, you do it right from the get-go. Take the time. You're going to do it, capture everybody you need to capture. Because if you don't, moving forward, it's going to be even harder next year to try to get something added. I've seen that. I've seen it with cancer for firefighters, for say, something that I think is so simple to try to get the group that's, when you go through next year, even the next election cycle, it could be a whole different group sitting in here. You're starting from block 1. So like I say, in a nutshell, while I do have the utmost respect for our military people, I say I have members of my own family that serve. I do feel that we also deserve that recognition also. We're kind of the unsung heroes. You know, after 9/11, everybody loved firefighters and cops. A year later, they could care less. Remember, 343 firefighters lost their lives that day in one event. That's a large number in comparison. The two do parallel, contrary to what some people may testify. They're both very similar. If you went back probably 30 years in the fire service, majority of people in the fire service were military. They came out of one of the conflicts, Korean or Vietnam, and they found a natural transition to become firemen and cops. It was a large number. Their numbers have dwindled. I mean, there's other things they can get into now, more technical fields. I wonder, like, when my kid says, I want to be a fireman. So why do I want to do it? It's a tough job. I mean, you can make a lot more money working at home, you know, being a computer programmer or whatever than you can with this job, with a lot less chance of having physical injury or harm down the road, which you pay for. But you got to understand that the sacrifices, commitment are very similar. The dangers and sacrifices are very similar. The commitment and the dedication of both members are very similar. We both face dangers and are willing to put our lives on the line for others in a minute's notice. We never hesitate. So I would say, instead of working to eliminate public safety, I don't know why the military isn't working with us to have a stronger united voice. Say, hey, they're both the same. We're going to capture a lot of veterans by getting public safety. Like I said, when I retired, one of the guys on my shift was in the Navy. I can go back a little further when you had June Heston speaking. I had a gentleman that worked with the general who developed cancer. He actually testified down in the Senate on the burn pits, Wesley Black, great, great friend, like a brother to me. He was on my shift and he got colon cancer from the burn pits. I'll tell you this though, he was heartbreaking because after getting out of the military, he went in the military because I remember him telling me the story. He went in the military because he felt he had to serve after 9/11. His one drive, one desire in life, after he did his 1 or 2 terms over, and he did 2 or 3 terms in Iraq as a sniper, was to be a firefighter. That was his dream. The poor kid gets hired, and 2 years later, he noticed blood in his stool. He didn't think much of it, and we finally pushed him to go, and he had stage 4 colon cancer. Stage 4 colon cancer. So he was a walking dead man. Left behind a young boy, 3-year-old boy. So it's just sad. I mean, it happens across the board. We see firefighters. I just 2 months ago got notification of a firefighter up in Chittenden County, young kid, 32 years old. Not in the military, but to say it's similar, 32 years old, stage 2 colon cancer. So we see very similar rates. They parallel one another. So, like I say,
And that's from the firefighting.
for firefighting in general, yeah. Yeah, one of the things we're working on, not to develop too much for PFAS next year, it's not gonna fight. A lot of volunteers fight us on that because they don't understand the dangers. It's killing us.
Yeah.
The fact that we're going into stuff where everybody else is running out, it's on you. There's just so many dangers we know. We're just starting to keep track of those. But 75% of active duty deaths for the IFF, career firefighters, cancer, occupational cancer. So I have 195 names that were on the wall last year, 130 something were cancer related. That's a large number. And it's not going down. Fires are going down, cancers have been going up. So like I said, I'm honored to give you some testimony. I hope I didn't irritate anybody. I am an advocate that I think that public safety should be part of that exemption based on the fact that very similar jobs, very similar dangers, realities are the same. Second, I've heard you all talk about veterans. What better group to add in that you're going to capture a lot of veterans that do 1 or 2 tours and go into this field because it's a natural fit for them. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer.
Representative Blazazak, then Maslin and Feltus.
Good. Thank you, Chris. And so when I was before this, I was on the Barry City Council for 6 years and I did all of our collective bargaining.
Yes.
So we worked very closely with the firefighters union and it was the stuff that they were talking about in those negotiations are the same things that you're talking about. The cancer risks, I appreciate you bringing up VEMRs because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of what those benefits actually look like.
Yeah.
The recruitment and retention, and one thing that you didn't bring up too is the residency requirements or there's a limitation often about having to live in the community or a certain distance from the community when you have these jobs, which does limit, your ability to live life to the fullest, take a vacation whenever you want, especially if you're on call. So I appreciate all of that. And I, fully support making this a broader public safety bill, because I think that a lot of the similarities you pointed out are absolutely accurate. I'm just curious, I know in Barry City, we have a lot of overlap between folks who are in our PD and folks who are firefighters that are veterans. Do you have a rough ballpark of how many of your members statewide are vets? I'm just curious.
I don't. I mean, I could take, you'd have to give me a week or 2 of treadway, but I could probably put a thing out to ask on the fire side. I'm ballpark, I'm guessing, so like in Hartford, we have 1, 2.
And I don't want to put you on this.
No.
Just no, we
I'm saying
collect.
there's probably 1, 2, 3 or 4 at least in Hartford out of 26 on the floor. It's not a large number, but it varies, it varies with time. I'm sure that Burlington probably sees a lot more. I know South Burlington has people that have served or are serving, same with Williston. So like I say, I see a fair number. The police side, I wouldn't dare to make a stab at that, but I bet you probably see, in my opinion, I think you tend to see a little more going into the police side for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, in Hartford, we had two or three or four on the police side that were veterans that had served at some point.
Thank you.
Briefly,
Yeah.
Military retirement is 20 years. Are you recommending same for?
So my statement on that is, so military, you can retire at 20 years.
Yep.
But they also have a multiplier of 2.5%. Some could go to 75%, some could go to 100%. Beamers is 50% across the board. So it doesn't matter. So there's really no incentive to stay above 20 years on the public safety. That's another thing off the record that I'm going to try to work on next year is Group D.
You are very much on the record.
Beamers Group D, it's been floated out that Group D, which is specific to fire and police and EMS only. The Beamers Group D, maybe we bump that to 75% as an incentive because we lose people at 120, they're going to New Hampshire now. Luckily, our system now is a little stronger than New Hampshire's. That doesn't mean it's not going to change, but that would incentivize people to stay. Because we hire a lot of people at age 20, 22, and they have no real reason to stay after 20 years. This would entice them to stay 25, maybe 30 years. So, and that's the biggest difference is like Beamers right now, 50%. You don't get a penny above that, so.
You would, not be opposed or maybe encourage us to look at the parallels between the systems and see what would be an appropriate level to have people covered.
So I would say that all public, majority of our members are in Beamers, either C or D.
Yeah.
Burlington does have their own city retirement system.
Right.
South Burlington had it, so some of their members are in the city of South Burlington retirement system. All new ones are in Beamers. I think St. Johnsbury, don't hold me true to this, but I think St. Johnsbury is somewhat similar. They had their own, but moving ahead was all C. So I would say that all public safety retirees. And I say that, so some of our members in Hartford, some of the ones that retired prior to me, before Hartford got into Beamers, were in a separate retirement system. They were defined contribution basically. So they were retiring at very little to nothing. I know the police chief I'm very good friends with. When he retired, he had to actually go work another full-time job because he wasn't making another retirement.
Yeah.
Luckily, we've gotten our municipality into that, and most of the municipalities in the state, with the exception of, I think Burlington is still a holdout that has their own city retirement system, but are in group either C or D. And more are going to the Group D, because Group D has 20 years of service. The difference is you get out at age 50 instead of 55 without penalty. And I can tell you on the fire side, that's a big difference. You don't want a person pulling the line at age 55. So we try to get them out at a decent age with their retirement. And we also have avenues set up a 457 to help bump that to more realistic retirement of what you can come out at. The other interesting fact too is that military, and like I said, it's not a dig in military, but just something you should look at. Military usually gets medical. They have a medical benefactor. No, to my knowledge, Hartford might be the only municipality that has one. And the only reason we have it is we had to give up our sick time bank in exchange for our medical from age 55 to 62. So the problem is if I retired younger, I wouldn't get that until I hit 55. And you only get it for that time frame. But we had to give up our sick bank. So if you had 2,000 hours of sick time, you turn that in exchange for that. To my knowledge, no other municipality has that in the state, and I could be wrong, but I've never, when we've done our state meetings, I don't hear of any other doing that. So if they retire at 50 or 55, they have to go out and find their own health care, which is a huge added expense, as we all know. Another whole discussion in the state on healthcare, but.
Thanks. Representative Feltes?
My questions were the same. I didn't know the specifics of what your current retirement plan is.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's a Beamer's plan.
Yes.
And you can retire at age 50 with 20 years service and get 50%.
Depending on Hartford used to be in Group C. South Burlington's in Group C. St. Johnsbury's in Group C. I'd have to double check with Montpelier and Berry City. So a lot of them went in C because it's a cheaper amount that the town puts in.
It's
When
a
you go to-
negotiation.
Yes, you got to negotiate, yeah. And even to get into Beamers, you got to negotiate it. So
Okay.
we brought that up. I forget what we gave it. This goes back a long time ago to get that in Hartford because we said, hey, we were with ICMA defined contribution. And it was like this, one year he looks, I don't have enough to retire. So we went into this knowing to give us a security for recruitment and retention. This last contract, the police and the fire went into Group D to try to entice more people to come, to get you out at age 50, get best 2 years instead of 3. And that's kind of what we sold it on, say, hey, has it helped the recruitment and retention? Like I said, I can show you the numbers. When you're only pulling 10, 12, 13 for 4 positions, that's a low number. Ours is basically ours now, just, we have a perpetual list. We used to advertise, they still advertise, but the list, the chief will keep it open just because it takes so long to get a person, to get the numbers you need to apply. So we may only have 2 people for 2 positions, so, which is a challenge.
Thanks.
I wanted to ask you about you personally.
Yeah.
You get the 50% for your best 2 years. Does that count what you're getting paid? Can you count last year and this year if you're retiring right now?
So what Beamer's does is they take for Group D, a 24-month period. And it's not necessarily year to year, like January to January. It could be whatever captures your best 24 months. So it may have been my, 2.5 years ago to a year and a half ago, say. Those are my best 2 because of overtime.
But they let you count that not when you got to be 20 years. You didn't have to.
No, they do it at any time. They take, so you got every 20 years to get that benefit.
Yeah.
And it's based on your 2 best years. Traditionally, it's going to be when? Towards the end of your career. I mean, mine actually was, because I'm at a higher pay grade. Fortunately, in Hartford, we started staffing the second station, so it meant a lot more overtime, which has its pros and cons. I mean, there was times where I was just grumpy when I got home from work and pissed off at the wife, and because you're in there for literally, we work a 42-hour work week. Burlington works 56. So I could imagine working 72 hours. Some of the guys in Burlington, women, are working 72 hours or more straight. Sound like South Burlington. It killed me to do a 48-hour shift. 36 hours, I'm ready to get out of it. 24? Yeah, that's my minute, my maximum. But there was times at a 36-hour shift, I'm like, 48 hours certainly gets you because you're busy enough that you're getting woken up 2 or 3 times throughout the night. So you're lucky if you get 2 hours of sleep a night, and you're during the day. You can't dictate when the calls come. I mean, I've had shifts where literally it's quiet all day, and at 6 o'clock at night, guess what? Floodgates open. We do literally 12, 15 calls from 7 o'clock at night until 5 or 6 next morning. So as soon as you're back in, you're going out again, in and out. So, but yeah, so it takes your best, if you're in Group D, that 24-month period, whatever it slides.
Yep.
The same with Group C, it'd go from 24, 36 months, and they slide it to capture your best earnings in that time frame.
Representative Bodie, do you still have a question?
No, I
Okay.
think I know where I live.
I have a question. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but we're in the sort of difficult spot of balancing providing tax relief to folks with the fact to essentially like public employees, right? Whether they're federal public employees or state public employees, balancing that with any loss in revenue is revenue that we can't use to provide services to veterans or to increase the pay of firefighters or teachers or whatever. And I'm just like curious your thoughts on how to, if you have any wisdom for us on how to think about that. Because that's like part of where I feel stuck on all of this.
So it's a challenging question. I know that so I've done a lot of negotiations through the years from the union side, and pay is always a sticky point. But I'll tell you this, that when we started looking at, at one time we had an issue with pay parity with the police that we fought. Luckily, we won it, and it's based on how many hours does it take to become a firefighter compared to a police officer? They're very similar. So we used that fight, we won it. To come up with the funding, it's always, that's, I say, one of our biggest challenges with public safety is we tend to have a bullseye on our back with taxpayers. Military is different, it's more federal. You got a lot more, you know what I'm saying? You have a lot more to capture where even the state to a degree, I mean, I appreciate the state people in here, but the state's a lot bigger pool. Now, when you get down to the municipality, it's a lot more challenging because there's sometimes not a lot of money there. And that's where we see our biggest impact to our members is that it's an easy thing to, hey, let's cut these 3 firefighters positions. We come back with studies show you need a minimum of 400 on the first truck, a minimum of 4. There's times over, I get it when the call volume's high, that there was times I'd be the only one as a captain, because we had 2 ambulance calls going on. We had minimum staffing of 5. Nobody's coming back in the station. A, because they don't live in town. B, they just get stressed because they're working so many hours overtime. That I'd be the only one on the fire truck showing up to the call. Now, luckily, we got mutual aid, but that's still a lot can happen in the first 5, 8, 10 minutes by yourself on a truck. And you're going like, okay, what do I do? You know, to answer that question, I don't know if there's an answer. I mean, there's only so much money in the pot. I get that. And it's come down to what people believe their priorities are. I'm big on, I pay taxes. My main thing is schools. I want to make sure my kid gets a decent education. I want public safety. I don't know, when I call 911, I'm gonna get a police officer, fire truck, name it, whatever I need. It's important that happens. And of course, your roads. I know people have other views on different things. I appreciate that. It's good. It's good for discussion. But I say, the main thing you look at is that, God forbid your house catches fire. God forbid there's a flood. You can't get out of your house and you've got to call us to come get you. That those resources there that we can adequately get the staffing we need and get you out there. And I mean, what's unique like with Hartford, we were one of the first, going back on the John Wood, to initiate the USAR team. That was kind of his vision back in 93, 92, right after 9/11, basically. So we would have been kind of the leader at one point in the southern part of the state. And I've gone to numerous incidents where we show up. Irene was a classic one. I came into work that morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. We were working 10s and 14s. We weren't on 24-hour shifts. Came in at 7. At about 11 o'clock that morning, things started letting loose. We headed out with the boat, and a group of us, I think 6 of us, 2 vehicles and a boat, and started going to neighboring communities and getting hit, like Reading, South Woodstock. And there was times when we'd go out, we couldn't make it. We'd turn around and almost couldn't make it back because the bridge we just went across was almost underwater. It's like, holy shit, I'm never gonna get home tonight. But that was literally from 11 o'clock that night. And I think our last rescue I pulled before I got back to the station, probably 1:30 in the morning. Chief let us go home just to come back in at 7 the next morning. So that was a long 3 or 4 days. Kind of my little float for public safety is, yes, the National Guard got involved, but it was after, when everything was ebbing and going down. But we were the ones, when everything was going this direction, we were the ones out there doing it. When they came in, they helped us with a lot of stuff. I appreciate it. But until you've been out there at midnight, hearing that river rushing, and you're looking with a little flashlight going, how the hell am I gonna get over there? You can't see anything. It's a different whole feeling. Until you've crawled through a building with zero visibility and the heat's 200, 300, 400 degrees, you may have to make a push down the stairs into a basement, to put the fire out. You may have to go in and search because there's potential of a victim being there. You don't know what that's like until you do it the first time. Knocking on the door at 2 a.m, and that opens up, and all of a sudden you see a barrel of a shotgun sticking out. That's a scary spot to be in. My point is, we do it because we like to do it. That's our calling. I mean, we're too stupid to do anything else. But all I'm saying is that, I have the utmost respect for military, but we do this day in and day out without asking for anything. And I would just encourage you to support the members of public safety. And if you are going to move this, that you add public safety. And it's not a huge number. We're not talking 3,000 people, I don't believe. It's a relatively low number in the state, but it would send a good message to the people that are out there. Next time you have a flood, say, hey, I appreciate what you did for me, And like I say, most of our members do 20, some do 30. But they do it, no questions asked. Every morning they're going into work, may or may not come home at the end of the day, so.
Thank you.
So when you say it's not 3,000 people, you're talking fire, rescue, police?
So, and they do it, and there's a lot of confusion. So a lot of the career departments in the state run EMS. They do fire and EMS. Okay, the only ones I don't have doing it currently are Colchester, St. John area. They're in the process of taking it over. Rutland. Every other municipality does ambulance. So Berry City, Montpelier, Berrytown EMS, Hartford, Springfield, Brattleboro took it over. Burlington, South Burlington, and Williston. They all do 911 transports. As far as, and this is where it might get sticky, that's where you guys are gonna have to figure this out. There are private non-for-profit EMS. So I'm just advocating for mine from my whole wheelhouse. My knowledge is public, municipal public safety. That's what my wheelhouse is. So that's what I'm advocating for, is those fire and police that are municipally employed would get that. So I would capture your police officers, your firefighters in those communities. Plus, I have a couple others that aren't IFF, like Windsor, they're asking me, but they are municipal employees, so.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your service. And I really appreciate how you were, this is not about like one person's service being more important than another person's service.
And I wanted to make that distinction, and thank you, Madam Chair, and
Thank you.
I'm always, everybody sees me down there, I'm the fat old fireman, you can phone anytime you want to talk to, so.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for joining us.
Thank you.
Steve, you want to join us?
God, I was praying if he was gonna go after Chris.
He.
No,
Let's do next.
I'll go. I just want to lower expectations given what you just presentation. you just received.
And
That was fantastic.
I don't know if you've been in here this year either, so welcome to
I
the
don't know.
meetings.
I don't think I've been here since I left. I served with the greatest alum here, Representative Matt and Representative Brannigan. I was in this committee for 8 years. So I don't think I've come back since then.
Wasn't the Olahowski days?
Yeah, I started with Val. And then Obi.
Yeah.
I think that was it, was it? Is there
You
anybody
didn't have
else?
Janet,
Oh, I did have Janet too, yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Steve Howard. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont State Employees Association. And we represent the frontline workers in state government, colleges, judiciary, a number of other units. I'm going to be a little bit schizophrenic, but be patient with me. I'll get to the point. So we begin with the premise that our Veterans Council that has looked at this issue does in fact support this expansion of the tax credit. We also have a little bit of a schizophrenic view of the issue because as state employees, we represent a very broad and diverse population. And it is difficult to fully embrace. Sometimes that diversity is difficult to manage, but we're here today in what will be the 10th anniversary of the tragic murder of Lara Sobel, family service worker, who was murdered simply because she did her job. I spoke this morning to a correctional officer who reported that she had worked 11 16-hour shifts in a row to staff what is a crisis in our corrections department, a staffing crisis that is quickly turning into a severe emergency situation. I think about those folks who are doing those jobs, certainly our law enforcement officers who we represent as well. And I know that they also deserve the same kind of recognition and benefit that that military veterans receive. So here's where it gets a little schizophrenic. We would, while we would support the credit for military, we actually would support, if you're going to do military, we would say don't pick and choose. Because there are many state employees, almost all of them in this world that we're in today, where they're called the deep state. There's a lot of rhetoric out there about public employees. Don't pick and choose winners and losers. If you're going to do a tax credit or an expanded tax benefit for the military, we would ask that you do it for everybody, that you do the entire pension for everybody. Because it's really difficult to say that one person risking their life and admirably and honorably is any different than another. I would also want to I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the nurses and the medical and the techs at the Vermont Psychiatric Care Hospital. Earlier this year, a nurse at that facility was assaulted to such a serious extent that she was in the ICU for months, fighting for her life, just doing her job, just trying to take care of a patient, didn't mean to hurt her, but didn't know really what they were doing. So it's hard to pick winners and losers in this realm. Now, having said all that, we are, as many folks in this building are as well, very, very concerned about the fiscal situation the state faces. And we are concerned even before the cuts that are being discussed in Washington come to bear. We have 1,000 vacancies in state government. We are severely understaffed all across state government. And we are underfunded in many of the departments throughout state government, to the extent that we can't do things like even take care of children that are in our custody, traumatized children in our custody. You'll hear from family service workers, there are no services for these kids. They don't know what to do with these kids because there's no place to bring them. There's no therapists, there's no childcare, there's no nothing. So we would say that if you are going to exempt, if you are going to pass legislation that reduces the revenue to the state, you should make up that revenue in another way. And our preference is, there's at least a few. You've heard us talk about reference-based pricing. I won't go into detail there, but that's a $78 million savings to the state, according to Brown University. We would strongly support that, encourage the legislature not to leave until they adopt reference-based pricing for the public employees. We would also encourage you to look very seriously, and I know this committee did last year, at a wealth tax and also a surcharge, what I call the Snelling surcharge on the wealthiest folks in the state. And I know Representative Maslin is laughing because during those 8 years, I started every morning talking about the Snelling surcharge. I think the Snelling family sent me a letter saying, please stop talking about the Snelling surcharge, call it something else. But we believe that you can't, if the legislature wants our members to be able to continue to serve your constituents, and I think we're learning, at least one silver lining of what's happening in Washington is we're learning a lot more about what government does. A lot of people forget what government does and who shows up and who's doing the work and what they're doing and how important it is to their lives. We cannot erode the revenue base because we don't have enough revenue now. So we would encourage you to consider doing it for everybody and making up that revenue in another way so as to preserve at least the revenue that we have coming in now.
Thank you.
Are you familiar with the existing tax exemption for civil service and military?
I'm familiar with it to the extent that I read about it before I came in today. I would not claim to be an expert on it or even extremely knowledgeable.
I'm wondering, it's been in place for 4 years or longer?
I think 4 years feels right.
Right.
Yeah.
You didn't come forward for your members and ask about that
You mean 4 years ago?
last year?
I honestly don't remember whether we did or not. We may have. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you.
Representative Maslin was your?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind you, before the Snelling tax, it was poor women and children.
Yes,
You hear that several times daily.
yes. That was my mission in the Ways and Means Committee, to remind people behind every issue or spreadsheet, we were here to focus on the poor women and children.
Thank you.
And I was always I think David Zuckerman and I was always like 9-2 in support of those women and children.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Nice to be up. And this is a lot, these are fancier digs than what we had.
Oh, I actually really miss that old room because I
The
had
windows?
on two sides and there was this really nice tree
Lose that
with
one.
birds.
The windows are great,
We
that's
went
for
up to
sure.
12 members. We lost that room because we didn't fit.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For me. It's a sunny room.
It was such a nice room. Yeah. Keith, would you like to join us? Thank you. And I want to, I know that your members don't have pensions.
Yes.
And I know you provide really valuable services to the members of the state. So I just I didn't want to leave you out.
Oh,
of
sure.
This conversation. So.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Chair Kornheiser, and to the committee for having us. My name is Keith Brunner, and I'm the political organizer for AFT Vermont. AFT Vermont's a union that represents 11,000 healthcare and higher education professionals. So folks at the University Medical Center on the healthcare side, Central Vermont Medical Center, Porter, Northwestern recently, Planned Parenthood, the community health centers of Burlington, and then Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. And then on the higher education side, Bennington College, but then also UVM and the Vermont State Colleges. So that's just to kind of situate who I am and the members that I represent. I have just a very short statement, and just that, we as a union believe that the state needs to continue to invest in healthcare and higher education. We see them as public goods, especially with the concerning cuts that are coming from the current administration and Congress in Washington, D.C. That's very much on our minds. AFT Vermont supports raising revenue from the wealthiest Vermonters. Steve was just talking about those most able to pay to fund our state programs and services. And in particular, relating to H 483, if the legislature is going to be providing tax cuts to specific groups of people, we would recommend or suggest that this committee look into providing those tax cuts to nurses and nurse educators and other healthcare professionals in occupations in Vermont where there are severe shortages. These shortages in healthcare lead to the increased use of travelers, which drives up the cost of healthcare for everyone. And we think that that would be an investment we think would pay off for all Vermonters. So we just wanted to make that recommendation as an idea. And that's kind of what I wanted to share with the committee this morning. I'd be glad to, or this afternoon, I'd be glad to answer questions if people have them.
Anyone? Yeah, Representative Fulton.
What kind of an incentive would you offer to healthcare professionals? You mean a bonus payment or some kind of pension program or what?
Well, I think so. A lot of, and I'm not an expert, but I think a lot of our members have 403B retirement plans and analogous, looking at the way that those are taxed, analogous to the pensions or military and civil service would be something I think to look into. And one thing we're always talking about is how do we attract and retain healthcare professionals in the state, as well as provide kind of career tracks for young people of all ages who would like to become a healthcare professional, make it so it's tuition free. And we think that that could help sweeten the deal, attract and retain more healthcare professionals.
Thank you. Comment from your testimony and also those who preceded you. In that incident, we had two RNs in the family. Not working in this state, but two RNs. Just generally speaking, listening to the Hartford firefighter and others this morning I'm impressed with how many Vermonters in a whole variety of professions work their butts off. Some of them well compensated, some retirement, and some not at all. It's an investment. Personally, impressive group of people. And I just say that for those who are listening, it's good. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much for joining us, Keith. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you everyone for having me.
Jeff, it's so fun to have you here in a different capacity or a different topic.
It's nice to be back, and unlike Chris and Steve and Keith, I have been here before, so it's good to be back. A different situation. For the record, Jeff Bennett, Executive Director of Vermont NEA. Thank you for having me here to discuss with you pensions. To the question earlier about why the answer to Vermont NEA, we were not here earlier when civil service pensions were being discussed, and I said 3-4 years ago. You may recall that the teachers' retirement system then was a hot topic. We were in a pandemic, and I may have missed this, and so that's on me. And I'll accept that and say, here we are now to suggest, we appreciate you listening to us now on this issue. So teacher and support staffs in schools. So Chris spoke about the VEMR system, Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement System. And then I'll also speak about the Vermont State Teachers Retirement System, VISTERS. School employees are in both. So obviously teachers are in the Vermont State Teachers Retirement System, VISTERS. And that's a contributory plan. They contribute between 6.25 and 9% of their salary towards their pension, depending on their salary. And then on the VEMR side, the municipal system, school support staff, bus drivers, cafeteria workers who work in a school that has decided to participate in VEMRs, and most have at this point, they too contribute towards their pension. They're in Plan A or B. I think Chris could probably correct me. Much different pension amount than the public safety folks in D. And I'll say this both for both the state teachers retirement system and the VEMR's retirement system. They get a cost of living adjustment that is only 50% of the cost of living. So they get about half of a cost of living adjustment. So that's something we're working on fixing. That takes time and resources, and the number of resources are not yet where they need to be. So that's an ongoing discussion we have. We've had it recently in the Senate and in the Appropriations Committee. So that's ongoing. So it's a little bit of a backdrop of who we are and what our folks that I represent at Vermont NEA are in both plans. And in fact, in the VEMR's plan, about 2/3 of the people in the VEMR's system are school-based employees. So the majority of them are in the VEMR system are school employees. So again, paraeducators, support staff.
Sorry, you said 2/3?
About 2/3, maybe slightly less.
Well,
The entire VEMR system, more than half, I'll say it that way, are school-based employees. So again, bus drivers, paraeducators, administrative assistants are there. And it includes people who are IT experts in schools that are running the IT systems for school districts. So those are highly paid. School business managers. In fact, the VEMR's share is a school business manager. So their pay is different than, say, a bus driver's. I'll just say it that way. And it's not a knock, it's reality. And so as you look at civil service employees and exempting them from certain taxes and military personnel, that's a good thing. That makes sense. We support that. As well, though, it would make sense to us as teachers and support staff who work in public schools are contributing towards their pension and not enjoying a full cost of living adjustment. They too might enjoy the benefits of having a tax reduction to their pension. The VEMR system has a very, very, very modest healthcare benefit in retirement. It's $25. Yeah, it's $25. Fine. If you've tried to purchase healthcare anytime lately, that's probably not going to get you very far.
$25 a month is
Bottle of aspirin.
The teacher system has the system contributes 80% towards a single or two-person plan. Teacher contributes the rest. I think they're on the hook entirely for the cost of dental, and it's a one-time option when they retire to choose that. Can't choose it later for dental. So a lot of people miss that option, that choice, and later want dental and can't get it. So there are some real guardrails in the system to ensure that it's here today as well as tomorrow. Those are good things. But again, if there are other people who are enjoying a benefit, a tax benefit, because they're on a fixed income and a pension, it makes sense to us that school employees, broadly said, should enjoy that same benefit. They too work with kids on a day-to-day basis. I believe the number one, last I saw, it's one or two, but certainly high up there, cause of injuries for school employees on the job is interactions with students, quite honestly. And so they're in a difficult situation as well. So as you discuss pension tax benefits, I hope that you would consider school employees in that conversation as well. We think they deserve it. And it's important, and it would help attract and retain, I think, school employees. There's a big retention problem right now and attraction. Years ago, you would hear stories of 80 or 90 people applying for one single teacher job. That is not the case anymore. It is just not the case. And there is a teacher shortage that's been around for some time. And there is no end in sight for that. I've seen a lot of national stuff that would say teacher shortage in Vermont and other states across the nation is real and ongoing and looks to be for the next decade. There's no help in the seventh grade coming in droves for those positions. So it's something that we need to think about retaining people in the school profession, and this might help in that regard. I'm happy to answer any questions.
General comment, maybe it's something that goes to JFO over the summer, not to ask him to do something new right now, but it might be nice to have a spreadsheet to where we can compare all the different outfits that have come in and wholeheartedly or for good reasons said we deserve a break, whether it's military or public service or teachers or if you've been here, you've been in a room listening. There are a lot of people who are making legitimate requests for, I guess you would say, retirement relief. And given that the money decisions get made downstairs, a lot of this is going to add up to a considerable amount of money, and revenue is also very important. But I don't have in front of me enough to make a just comparison of the different requests and then to sort out how we would fund it. I'd be sort of not helpful. I don't think we can do everything in 1 year. And so I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Keith and Steve said earlier, and we would support this as well, I do think looking at a wealth tax is something that should be on the table. I've read this week that the Republicans in Texas are considering it. I've read that the Trump administration is also considering it. I don't understand how that squares with their tax cut for wealthy people, but I certainly don't understand all that's going on there in DC these days. So, but putting that on the table, I think is something important, Representative Maslin, as we look to give tax benefits to certain groups, there may be some offset necessary. And again, Steve mentioned it, we support reference-based pricing. Brown University said it would save $78 million if you just did it for school employees and state employees. So that would be a sizable, I believe more than 60% of that is for property tax relief. So I think it's in the neighborhood of $52 million, I think, of that sort. So those are sizable tax savings that could be used elsewhere, perhaps in other ways.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you all.
Folks, we are done for the day. We are not starting tomorrow morning until 10:30.